upgrade your comfort this season? Upgrade and save with the team at Legacy Heating and Air and Daikin. Right now, when you upgrade to select Daikin systems, you can receive up to $3,500 in rebates and incentives. The revolutionary Daikin Fit system is built to fit your space and your budget, and with flexible financing and payment plans to suit any budget, plus no payments or interest until 2026. An upgrade doesn't have to wait. This deal won't last long. Schedule your free in-home estimate today. Visit LegacyHeatingandAirInc.com to view exclusive offers and get qualified now.
Welcome to Football Never Sleeps, the aspiring to be viral Notre Dame football show that runs weekly, even through the off season. When you think football is over, it's not. My name is Eric Hansen. The guy in the other square next to me is Tyler James, and we're here to talk about everything that you want to talk about regarding Notre Dame football, and maybe some things you don't want to talk about, but hopefully will put up with us. We do include you in our conversation. You can ask questions, you can give us compliments, you can make comments, and you can even suggest different wardrobe choices for both Tyler and me. We also need you to hit like buttons and observe other things that I'm not very good at. So Tyler will do that part right now. And I cannot hear Tyler, so I bet you guys can't either. So you have
How about this?
Yeah. They were doing the lip reading. That was the lip reading portion of our show.
I was just making sure people were paying attention. As I said to no one, please make sure you're subscribed to our channel here on YouTube. Hit the bell for reminders of when we have content, and hit the like button. Smash the like button to support the show. We appreciate those of you chiming in throughout the show. Hello, Jason, Rajon, and Frank. Thanks for already talking in the chat. And I'm glad that your guys' mute buttons aren't on. Make sure that you consider our option to subscribe to Inside Any Sports. If you're not a subscriber to our website, we have a 30-day free trial available for our YouTube audience. Use the promo code NDYT when you sign up to get free access to our premium analysis and recruiting coverage, and special access to us over on the Insider Lounge, where we spend a lot of our time and share our inside information first. Like yesterday, I had some quotes from Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, the number one outside linebacker in the 2025 class, about why he scheduled an official visit to Notre Dame. I had that up as soon as I spoke to him. So those are the kinds of things you can get access to with a subscription to our site. There is a link to sign up for that deal in the video description below. So please give that consideration if you've yet to subscribe to us over at InsideNDSports.com.
My first question before I go into the introduction is, if Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng ends up signing with Notre Dame, will it be worth Marcus Freeman doing a setup fake phone call on signing day?
If that means he signed, I think you do whatever you got to do, right? If that's the word, that's the biggest thing he's got to do is fake a phone call. Maybe try to answer it correctly, like Brian Kelly didn't, but answer it while the phone's still ringing. Yeah, no, that we'll see if there's any sort of charades like that. I do expect his recruitment to go late into the cycle, so maybe whether it's Notre Dame or someone else, we'll be finding out during the early signing period. Okay,
we'll talk a little bit about Nathaniel later in the show, the half-brother of Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, All-America linebacker at Notre Dame. So we're taking stock of Notre Dame football heading into graduation weekend, and then a short break before the veterans report back on June 2nd. Notre Dame remains at 88 scholarship players, 3 over the limit, as players are free to go home. They were free to study abroad, work on internships, etc., before reporting back on June 2nd for the summer. Incoming freshmen enrolling for the first time, there's 8 of them, and they will report on June 9th. So our opening drive is spinning forward, and we're going to do it in a number of ways, but we're going to start with a transfer portal issue. And that is there any reason to believe, Tyler, that Notre Dame might not add a transfer cornerback after all, or any other scholarship transfers, given that they're at 88 right now and need to get, somehow have three players lost through attrition?
Yeah, I think that's becoming increasingly likely. As I reported on the Insider Lounge last week, I think Notre Dame is left looking in the preferred walk-on market for more transfer, specifically at cornerback, which is one position we know that Notre Dame has been actively trying to add someone. It still is a need, so I think there still could be movement there, and we've seen some preferred walk-on offers go out there previously. I don't know if any of those guys end up at Notre Dame. But we'll see if Notre Dame can get that depth there. I think it's not unrealistic to feel like that's the best way to go, because getting a scholarship guy, the role that we were talking about is like a fourth cornerback, backup nickelback. That's not the most attractive role for someone in the transfer portal. And Notre Dame's numbers are in a position where they have to lose guys before they start adding more. And I mean, I think if Notre Dame was talking about like adding a starter, like say magically there was a starting left tackle in the portal, I think they'd probably take that guy as a scholarship player. But when we're talking about depth players like this, it's just that would just add another player to the list that you'd have to sort of either encourage to leave or put on medical scholarship, do any number of things. But I think that's probably where we're going moving forward. There's a few offers to the transfer portal walk-on cornerbacks that have been out there. Montre Miller from West Virginia, Cornell's Anthony Chideme Alfaro, and Dartmouth's Tyson McLeod. Frank Sarah asked the question, is Notre Dame still in the running for the Rice cornerback? I wanted to get your thoughts on that, Eric. I know you've been in contact with Trayshawn Devons more frequently than I have. What do you think Notre Dame could possibly add him as a preferred walk-on?
I don't think he would be up for that. I think he would want to be on scholarship. And he has other offers where he would be not only on scholarship, he would be a starter at those schools. And the latest one to come his way is SMU. He visited Duke recently. He's visited a handful of other schools, all of which like his film. And again, I think he would be good for Notre Dame. I don't think he would rise above either the third or fourth cornerback, probably the fourth. I just think Christian Gray is really, really good. And I think Jaden Mickey is also a guy with a lot of upside. And given everything that Jaden Mickey has gone through, I think it's going to be hard to beat out somebody with that kind of resolve. So you're right. I mean, it's a depth piece, and that's trickier with the transfer portal when you are, trying to give away a scholarship you really don't have. And I think, maybe Notre Dame was surprised a little bit that there weren't more takers in the spring portal season. I know that they're very much in touch with their players, but there might have been a couple guys that took U-turns, and Tyson Ford is one of them. I mean, Tyson Ford didn't show up for the whole last week of spring football and yet stayed on the roster. And so, when you are trying to be that fine and hitting 85 right on the nose, it's more art than science sometimes. So, okay, next thing we'll talk about is Logan Saldate. He is one of 8 scholarship freshmen who will enroll in June for the first time, and that's out of 23 freshmen in that class. So 15 of them enrolled in January, 8 enroll in June. And my question to you, Tyler, is, given everything that you know about Logan, and I did a story on him over the weekend, could we be underestimating his impact? We've kind of put him on the back burner, given all that depth at the slot receiver position. But is this a guy that could surprise us in August?
Personally, I don't necessarily see the path to playing time at the position that he would be best at, and that would be slot. I think you already have 3 guys there if they stay healthy: Jaden Greathouse, Jordan Faison, Jaden Harrison. Harrison did end spring with an injury, so maybe something continues to impact his ability to play wide receiver, but it's just not. It's not a spot where I feel like Notre Dame is in dire need of someone. So I that significantly decreases the likelihood that he would make an impact in 2024. I think he's a great kid, an interesting prospect. and certainly someone that can make an impact during his career at Notre Dame. But I think an impact as a freshman would be a bit ahead of schedule, in my opinion. But there's almost always someone who surprises us from the summer freshmen who arrive. So maybe it's him. I would like maybe some other guys' chances better given their path to playing time. But what do you think? Did his interview with you sway you in one direction?
Well, I've had Logan a couple times. I had him when he flipped his commitment to Notre Dame, and then I talked to him the other day. So I know him a little bit, and I am a fan of what he's going to turn into. And I think he's working really hard to be that person when he walks in the door. But I agree, the path is, you got to be realistic about what the path is. And what I think in time, he's going to, when there is an opportunity, he's going to be ready for it. And he's going to be really good. I thought one of the interesting conversations that we had that I didn't put in the story, I said, are you just strictly a slot receiver or can you play outside? And he said, I've been really honed in on this playbook. And he said, my understanding of it is, yeah, I am primarily a slot receiver, but there's so much motioning to the outside. So I could, run a route from a typical slot inside position. And the next play, I could motion to the outside and actually be on the outside, be on the perimeter. And he feels like he has the speed to do that. When you look at his track times, I mean, this is a guy with verifiable track times. I mean, he's been in the 10-second range. He had a fast time of 10.79 seconds in the 100 this year. He ran track until the end of April. He was a state qualifier last year. In fact, he was second in all of California in the long jump last year. He's not going to do that. He really wants to focus on football and his conditioning and being ready for that, lifting, and he's taking it very, very seriously. So from a mental standpoint, he's ready right now. So it's going to be really interesting to watch this kid. He's also gotten a lot bigger. He was 5'10", 170 when he signed his letter of intent in December after his high school, which is Palma High School. It's in Salinas, California. He's from Gilroy, but he commuted down to Palma because it's a football school. They won the Class 4A state championship on December 9th. So he was 5'10", 170 then. He's 5'11", 187 now, and he's a muscled guy. He has a wrestling background. His brother is a wrestler at Michigan, having just transferred from Michigan State. And so he is a really interesting player. I think if he was on the roster last year, he would have played. There would have been a path for him. But this is a different year, and Notre Dame is really stacked at the position of slot receiver.
I think it was that Logan say nicer things about me. Is that what that?
Yeah, he said. I'm going to text him back and say, "Hey, I gave you all the airtime that you deserve." No, but he was a fun guy to talk to. We're going to do a series on the June arrivals, and I'm eager to talk to a lot of those guys, including the two cornerbacks, given the situation where one of them may have to step forward and be a candidate for that fourth position. Of those two, Tyler, who do you feel like is more, I'll use the term, somebody used it the other day, whistle ready?
Ooh, whistle ready. I think I would tend to say Leonard Moore would be someone I think would be more prone to be ready to play at Notre Dame. Although I don't know. I think Carson Hobbs may be a better nickel option than Leonard Moore. So I guess it depends on what you're looking for. I don't know that there's a huge difference between the two, but I do think Leonard Moore, I think, has just a better track record of playing at a high level. I think Carson Hobbs certainly plays against good competition as well, coming out of Cincinnati. Yeah.
Both played really good competition. That's one thing I noted.
And so I do think Leonard Moore may be a little bit better, but I wouldn't be surprised if Carson Hobbs certainly outplays his 3-star rating, which Rivals has given him in the 2024 class.
We've got some more of these spinning forward categories here. Do we want to go to questions yet, or just plow right through these?
We can go to questions.
Okay.
A recruiting related one from Jeff Stevens. 2 years in, how do you assess the Marcus Freeman rule of no official visits to other schools following your Notre Dame commitment? Should we feel confident generally about the 2025 commitments?
I like the policy, and I think Notre Dame has been pretty consistent with it, and I think it served them well. I don't know that they've lost a recruit necessarily over having that policy where the person says, well, if you're not going to let me go take official visits, I think it's somebody that they would have lost anyways. And it felt like the first year of NIL that there were Peyton Bowen, it felt like he used Notre Dame as a placeholder. I'll say that. And then went and looked at other offers. And I think Adam Gorney, when we had him on one of our podcasts, he felt like this was something that was happening during the first cycle of NIL nationally, where kids would commit to a school, then keep taking other visits and looking to up the ante on the NIL offer. And I think it serves Notre Dame well. Should we feel confident generally about 2025 commitments? Tyler, you got a much better handle on that. I haven't heard, other than Sean Terry, of anybody being a little bit shaky, and I don't even know where that stands. Wasn't Notre Dame at Ironton High School today or tomorrow?
Today, Mike Brown was supposed to be at Ironton High School, correct, which is where Sean Terry goes to school. And yeah, we had heard from our Missouri site that Sean Terry visited during April. There was maybe some disputing whether or not that happened, but I have no reason to doubt why that would not be the case. I don't know why Missouri would make that up. It's not going to help them get Sean Terry in their class if they're making up the fact that he allegedly visited. So that's I think something to continue to monitor. We'll see what happens there. Deuce Knight's the other one. He visited Ole Miss. If he visits Alabama, I think that would be not a great sign for Notre Dame. He's saying all the right things and continuing to show up on Notre Dame's campus with regularity, recruit other Notre Dame recruits. So I think Notre Dame's going to be okay there, but I think that's going to also be one where he's such a talented prospect that folks are going to continue to come after him. So Notre Dame's going to have to continue to keep on him there and make sure he knows why he's in the class and why he wants to come to Notre Dame. I would imagine Notre Dame having a successful passing attack this season would help that with Mike Denbrock as the offensive coordinator. Those, I guess, would be the two names right now that I've been monitoring. At one point, Davion Dixon was someone that I was watching, but he seems very firm in his commitment to Notre Dame. But yeah, I mean, Notre Dame is very upfront about, hey, when you're committed to us, we're in this in the long haul with you, and we want you to be the same way. And so when you commit to Notre Dame, you do that with the understanding that, hey, you're not looking to sort of continue this with other schools. It's okay to talk to other schools, but to follow through and let them pay for an official visit for you is something that's highly discouraged by Notre Dame. So it seems to work for the most part. And I think Notre Dame's going to try to continue to do it and use it in whatever ways it can to sort of make sure that it can trust the guys that say that they're committed to them. We have another question here from Brian Habermel. Jaden Daniels averaged 11 to 12 carries a game at LSU, and Sam Hartman averaged 3 to 4 at Notre Dame. With Mike Denbrock, the amount of quarterback rushes at ND will probably go up. How much would you expect them to go up by?
If Riley Leonard is the quarterback and that he is healthy, I would expect it to be in the Jaden Daniels range. And there may be games where it's more than that, and there may be games where it's less than that. And it just depends on how the defense is playing, the circumstances of the game, and so forth. But, Mike Denbrock, they ran Deshaun Kaiser a lot in 2015, and there wasn't an alternative. If I mean, there was a freshman version of Brandon Wimbush that year if Deshaun Kaiser got hurt. So there was a very thin depth chart. And behind Brandon Wimbush, there were walk-ons. So they're not afraid to put their quarterback out there and run him. And Riley Leonard is a big, strong kid. Again, he got hurt not on a planned quarterback run, but on an unplanned quarterback going backwards, which didn't happen very often. Duke didn't give up very many sacks to any of their quarterbacks, and Howard Cross got him on that. And so, yeah, I think it will be a big part of Notre Dame's game to the extent that it was with Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I didn't double check the math. I know Brian even sent me a table with some of the numbers. Especially if those carries include sacks, which that's what they are considered in official statistics. But you can obviously you could subtract those out if you did like a detailed analysis of it. I do think Riley Leonard's going to get sacked some. That's one of my concerns with Notre Dame's offensive line. But beyond that, I do think they're going to run the football with him, and he's also going to make plays with his legs on passing plays as well. So I would probably say in the 8 to 10 range is probably what I would forecast. I think you have a quarterback room where you have the depth that you shouldn't be afraid to use your star quarterback's best attribute, one of his best attributes. So I think Notre Dame will use Riley Leonard. Certainly when you don't need to do it, then if you feel like you're sort of overmatching the defense and it's not something you need to do, then you could be a little bit more careful with that. But especially against better defenses, I would expect Riley Leonard to have a significant role in carrying the football as well. Jason Smith following up on our visits conversation. He says, is it any visits or just official visits? Official visits is where Notre Dame has been more of a stickler about, right, rather than unofficial visits.
They just furrow their brow if it's an unofficial visit. Okay, so
here you go. Let's follow. Jimmy Page has a question. What depth, Angeli and 2 unknowns in terms of quarterback? I would say Angeli and 2 unknowns is better than 80% of college football's depth chart at quarterback. What else are you supposed to have at quarterback? I don't know. If you're counting Kenny Minchie and CJ Carr as unknowns, yes, but they're pretty talented unknowns too. So if you have a quarterback in Steve Angeli who has some experience and has shown an ability to play when needed as your backup, and then 2 talented guys behind that, that's a deep quarterback room. I think if you don't think so, I'd encourage you to maybe do some more research about some of the other quarterback rooms across the country.
Okay.
Does the silence mean complete agreement, Eric?
Well, no. I mean, I would agree, and I just was wondering if that was the Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin.
Yes, definitely. That's him.
Okay. I'm a big fan of your work, Jimmy.
You were just starstruck, so you didn't know what to say.
Exactly. Okay. So Ross Dellinger from Yahoo Sports, who does a great job. We're part of the Yahoo Sports family in Rivals. He did a piece recently looking at one of the unintended consequences of the quickly evolving amateur model toward revenue sharing and possible unionization. And one of the unintended consequences would be roster reductions in football that could severely limit walk-ons. How might that affect Notre Dame, Tyler, beyond the sentimental of there will never be another Rudy?
One, I don't totally believe this. It seems more like, I guess the idea of walk-ons that maybe they're all scholarship players maybe happens. I guess my perspective is it just seems like posturing to me. Like it's trying to gain some power. It's trying to gain some power back. Like, oh no, we're not going to have walk-ons anymore. What are we going to do? Your rosters are going to be so small. Like,
I love the whining. That's good whining.
I don't buy it. I think it's sort of trying to strike fear into coaches. I don't think coaches football is the powerful entity in this. Like, I just can't imagine that football is going to get put in a position that it's not going to want. I mean, yes, they might be put in a position where schools are going to have to pay players or share money with players, but I just can't imagine roster numbers being significantly impacted by this. I'll believe it when I see it. I guess that was more my perspective. I don't know if you had a different reaction than me. I don't know if you had any whiny voice impressions, but
I can do the Teddy Wendy Weiner voice from Saturday Night Live past. We don't want to go on a cruise. We want to go to Toledo. Okay. Anyways, yeah, I'm wondering if it's posturing as well. It doesn't seem like it's necessary that you would have to do that. You already have a division where the scholarship players get a Notre Dame scholarship is worth a lot of money. And you already have that division now. I'm curious if there would still be revenue sharing at a maybe lower rate with walk-on players. But let's say that it was a reality that they did reduce walk-ons. I think, Notre Dame doesn't get the quality of walk-on some schools do because of the tuition price.
right.
You have fewer choices, and yet Notre Dame has done a really good job of finding those that fit being able to afford Notre Dame, whether it's with help, help or not help, and making the most of those. You look at this year's roster, you have 3 guys on the roster that I can think of off the top of my head that are former walk-ons, and Jordan Faison, who came with a partial lacrosse scholarship. You have Luke Talich and then Davis Sherwood. And then you look at the special teams players Notre Dame has been able to get to maybe not frontline special teams guys, but guys that will compete with your scholarship players. I believe Eric Goins is a walk-on, and there were 3 guys from the transfer portal coming in here lately, Tyler, that you've reported on that have been that are walk-on transfers. So I do think it helps your team. I think it helps with scout team. I think it helps with special teams. And you're right. Let's see if it really becomes a reality. And then maybe there'll be a Rudy 2 movie at some point.
Yeah,
The
it was
other
just
thing-
it was just a weird thing. Like in the same story, it was talking about how actually baseball, there's a chance that the roster they're going to actually have the potential to give more scholarships. Like, well, so why would baseball be getting more flexibility when then football's going to lose flexibility? I just don't see that happening. It just didn't make a lot of sense to me. What was being proposed, and it wasn't all totally lined out. Ross was just sort of honing in on this one sort of concept as it relates to roster limits and scholarships. So I don't know.
I don't know that the baseball roster would get bigger, but his point was that it would be fully funded. I think there's basically 32 guys on your baseball roster and 11.5 scholarships. So you've got guys splitting scholarships, and you got mostly walk-ons on baseball teams across the country. And that's for the teams that really want to invest in baseball. And believe me, the teams Notre Dame plays on a regular basis will want to do this. They'll want to fully fund baseball. They have 7 teams in the top 18 right now in the ACC.
Yeah, so. I just don't think their football programs were like, yeah, go ahead, get rid of all of our. We're going to settle for 85 players. I just don't. I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
The one that was a little bit more compelling to me was he had a piece about the Football Oversight Committee appearing ready to greenlight analysts and quality control coaches being able to do on-the-field coaching. Right now, they can't. That would essentially deregulate the size of the coaching staffs because there's no limit on analysts or quality control coaches. This could be finalized by the end of June. So good for Notre Dame, good for college football.
I think in theory it should be good for Notre Dame. It's a program that should be able to attract bigger names with better resumes and get them in these different roles that sometimes hasn't included on-field coaching, and then will now include on-field coaching. Notre Dame has a number of analysts that it utilizes, and those guys can't coach on the field. But then this change would allow them to do that. It sounds like it would, in my opinion, seems like a good thing for coaches. Do you have more chances to have those opportunities if you're in those roles? I think the concern is like it's just another part of what becomes an arms race across college football is how willing is your athletic department to enormously staff your football program with all these different coaches. I mean, at some point, it's like you got too many coaches, right? Like, not everyone can do. Like, you're not gonna have a coach per player. Like, I don't like. I know, like, that's a big thing. Like with college education, right? When you go make all these campus visits as a prospective student, you're like, we have a 12-to-1 student to teacher ratio or whatever. I don't know if that's going to be a big selling point for college football moving forward, but I think it seems like something that's like, how well is it being legislated anyways? Like, who knows whether or not certain guys are actually coaching on the field at any given moment across college football, regardless of their title. So it seems like something that is probably easier just letting be unlegislated than what is currently the situation. What do you think?
I think there will never be 10 men on the field again on a goal line situation at the end of the game. I agree with you. It could get kind of arms racy. It already is to a certain extent because of the infrastructure with recruiting and stuff. But I do think there's a point of oversaturation where there's too many. But I think we're going to get into deregulation of a lot of things. And then we've talked about this a lot, Tyler, that those bottom line figures with the numbers of revenue coming into SEC, Big Ten, and Notre Dame versus Big 12 and ACC, there's a gap there. And it's going to show up in these kinds of things. This is what's going to allow Notre Dame to decide whether it wants to do it, versus it can't afford to do it. It will have a choice, whereas maybe some of those other Power 4 schools will not be able to do it. And certainly Group of Five in Oregon State and Washington State.
Yeah, and as Rajon smartly said, some more coaches but fewer players.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think if that's the choices that colleges would have to be making, I don't know that would be the route they go. But they're probably also not on the football oversight committee either. But Brian also had a follow-up on this. Analysts still can't recruit off campus, though, right?
You know, I don't know that that's in the that's included in the legislation. I don't think that's a part of it. So they would not be able to recruit off campus. We do know that grad assistants can kind of fill in for a coach, and Chad Bowden has been able to also go out and recruit, and he's not an on-field coach.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen anything as it relates to that, but there is a rule, like you're limited to a certain amount of guys on the road. Right. So it wouldn't be of any necessarily advantage to have your analysts out recruiting unless they were just way better personalities than your position coach. But then maybe you're threatening the job stability of your position coach if you let those guys out recruiting too.
Right. And head coaches can't. And that's been a rule since the Charlie Weiss era. And Charlie was one
during
of
the
spring.
They can
during the spring.
They can't
during the
spring. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is one of that is kind of the Charlie Weiss, Pete Carroll rule. Those guys dominated in their spring recruiting, and other coaches said, hey, we don't want to do that. So let's pass a rule that those guys can't either. So, and then we have just a few things, little transfer portal housekeeping. Micah Bell has a new school, the former quarterback at Notre Dame. Where is he now, Tyler, since you reported on that?
Yeah, he committed to Vanderbilt, and apparently will be given a chance to play wide receiver at Vanderbilt. So that was kind of interesting. We'll see what happens with him there. His brother is a wide receiver at Georgia, and certainly we know about his speed. And then I guess if that was something that was interested him, maybe explains a little more about why he decided to get out of Notre Dame so early, because we thought that there's still plenty of time for him to make an impact on Notre Dame's roster at the cornerback position.
And then of the guys that are still looking, I think Antonio Carter the second and Skip Vallata were the two that have not found a home yet. What do we make of the fact that Antonio Carter was so sought after in the last cycle and not very sought after this time?
Yeah, it's talk about a harsh reality when you were the hot commodity at this time last year, and you've been in the portal for a while and haven't found your landing spot. So yeah, it's I mean, obviously teams are questioning why he couldn't make an impact in a greater way at Notre Dame. I don't know what he's looking for in terms of what position does he want to play. He came to Notre Dame and got bigger and was trying to play safety, but played a lot of cornerback earlier in his career. So, when you're still in the portal this time, you wonder if you're just going to be going back just so they're the same level of football that he was playing in before. And I think that would be pretty demoralizing to be in that spot. So I don't know what's going to happen with him. I haven't heard much about it. I haven't done much reporting on it either. But I'm a little surprised by that. Skip Vallata, at least according to LinkedIn and an Instagram post yesterday, I think he's been doing a strength and conditioning internship with Iowa. So I don't know if that for certain means his football playing days are over, or he could still transfer somewhere else. I don't know how that would impact his eligibility. But I believe that's what he was up to.
Maybe he can be a consultant on how Iowa could score more than 4 points a game.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they'll just promote him to starting quarterback. I don't know.
Okay, we are going to spring forward with regard to recruiting. Before we get to this, do we have any questions we need to hit before we get into the recruiting topics?
Yeah, we got one more from John Baker. What are the academic requirements for a graduate transfer? How many hours are they required to complete?
Okay, you mean, and John, I'm going to assume, and you can let me know if I'm wrong here, what they're required to do at Notre Dame. So what Notre Dame has changed the game here. It used to be you had to come in and you had to have a graduate transfer plan and take graduate classes. And they do this for both their own players that have gotten their degrees and have stayed on as graduate players, especially with now that we have a lot of sixth-year players because of COVID. We're almost through that cycle. So they have two options. They can take graduate courses, or they can take a non-degree seeking curriculum where they are taking classes, but they're not taking they're taking the minimum load. They're taking easy classes so that they can work on getting ready for their football career beyond Notre Dame. Sam Hartman was a guy that was on that track. I believe that Xavier Watts is going to be on that. Now, he's already got a graduate degree. Howard Cross, I think, is going to get another graduate degree. So not everybody is doing the same thing. Incoming graduate transfers have that choice, and some of them really want to take advantage of that Notre Dame education. Some want to get that 1-year MBA, and some of them say, I want to play in the NFL, and I can always come back and get a graduate degree later. So it's not a one-track mindset. It's really two different ways that you can go.
Yeah, I couldn't tell, John, what the exact requirements are. I imagine it's whatever's close to the NCAA minimum. Like, I think they've gotten to the point where as long as they're eligible to play by the NCAA standards as a graduate student, then Notre Dame's good with it. They are not being sticklers for you got to graduate. You get a graduate degree by being a graduate student or a graduate transfer. I think there have been guys that have been here that are like, yeah, I'm not even sure what I'm majoring or what I'm doing yet. Like, it's not something that's much of a priority. I know that might hurt the hearts of people who die for the education part of the college football experience, but as it relates to grad transfers, it's not that big of an emphasis, but it can be. If you want to be going for a master's or getting an MBA in something, like you can do that. Notre Dame will make that available to those guys and be as amenable as possible for that.
It's a great selling point. It's a selling point in all sports. I know for example, Lauren Ebo, who was Notre Dame women's basketball center a couple of years ago, she got a master's in 1 year at Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are students that want to take advantage of that, and it puts Notre Dame over the top in terms of having that. So having it in your catalog to sell, I think, is a good thing.
All right, that's all for the questions, Eric.
Okay, so the Irish coaches have been covering a lot of ground on Monday through Thursday since the end of the football season. So 8 of them go out every week. Are there any significant stops last week or today, Monday, that we should note?
I look at it more in terms of big picture of just keeping track of where the coaches are going, who they're keeping tabs on. It sort of indicates sort of the interest level and how much they feel like they need to sort of keep track of someone. 2025 targets of note that Notre Dame visited last week. Jadon Blair and Jameer Joseph, both are safety targets in the 2025 class. That's Notre Dame's trying to add one more safety in this class. And those are the two top candidates right now. Both are planning to be on campus for official visits in June. A couple of 2026 targets to highlight, pair of linebacker targets, Tymus Davis out in Charlotte and Samu Mawala out in California. Both of those guys I think Notre Dame is in good shape with. But yeah, they've been seeing 2025 and 2026 and even some 2027 recruits throughout the country. Al Washington visited a bunch of 2025 defensive line prospects. Notre Dame's trying to add one more defensive lineman to the class. But from everything I've heard so far, I don't think Notre Dame's going to push for guys like South Carolina defensive end commit Caleb Williams or Duke defensive end commit Samson Onuoha. Both of those guys Notre Dame checked in on last week. Brandon Finney's someone that Notre Dame was recruiting early on in the 2025 class as a receiver. But I think Notre Dame would pursue him as a safety if it misses out on Jadon Blair or Jameer Joseph. So a name to just maybe file in the back of your head, but I don't know that that's necessarily going to matter. But Notre Dame just trying to keep its options open and know what's out there and develop relationships and connections with coaching staffs across the country and see guys like what it's a chance for them to see them in person at some of the workouts and showcases that happen across the country. I know today Marty Biaggi was at number of different schools in Connecticut that were hosting showcases for the players.
He was in the continental United States. What's wrong with him?
yeah. Australia to Hawaii to Connecticut. Those three all seem pretty similar to me.
I guarantee he couldn't find a Vegemite sandwich in Connecticut. So, okay. You recently did a story on 10 recruits who can end up in the 2026 class. It was a premium story. One of the reasons you should subscribe, and Tyler will tell you about the subscription offer we have at the end of the show. Based on your research for that story, how is the 2020 cycle starting out for Notre Dame, and anything notable that you'd like to point out in the story without giving it all away?
Yeah, I mean, I think Notre Dame's in a pretty good spot with the 2026 class. Obviously, Pot of Gold Day in March was when Notre Dame extended a bunch of offers in the class. I like where Notre Dame is positioned at quarterback. Noah Grubbs being the leading candidate to potentially join the class. He's the number 3 pro-style quarterback in the country, according to Rivals in the 2026 class. And Notre Dame has.
And is he future cast by you or no?
No, I don't think I have any future casts in the 2026 class currently. Although I've been considering when I want to pull the trigger on my first few for that class, but I have not put a future cast in there. But he would be towards the top of the list in terms of guys that I may future cast in the future. A lot of good defensive line options in the Midwest, as you can note by the list, particularly in Illinois and Indiana for Notre Dame. So kind of similar to the current recruiting cycle that Al Washington's been able to cash in with a number of guys in the Chicagoland area. I think there's an opportunity to do that again in the 2026 class. Notre Dame has some good options at linebacker as well, I think. And so I think Notre Dame should end up with a good haul there again. I think 2 positions that I don't have a good grasp on, although one wide receiver, they have a commitment already in Dylan Faison. I think the wide receiver and running back rooms, there's not a lot of options. That's like, okay, I can see this guy coming in Notre Dame. I think there's a lot. It's still early on in terms of guys that you would feel good about for Notre Dame at those 2 positions. So Some early thoughts there. Like you said, I put out that list last week, 10 guys. I had probably about a handful more that I considered putting on it, but wanted to keep the number more reasonable. So we'll see how smart I look or how dumb I look in about 5 months or so.
Okay, let's give you a chance to look smart or dumb now. We had talked about Brady Hart maybe kind of being earlier, another quarterback from Florida, maybe being the early favorite to land in the class, and now it looks like Noah Grubbs might be. Of those two, are they comparable? And if you had to pick one or the other, who would you pick?
I mean, I guess they're comparable. I'll be honest. I haven't spent a ton of time breaking down 2026 quarterback film. That's just not something that my time allows for. But Noah Grubbs was at Notre Dame's camp last year. I thought it looked pretty good. I think they're both highly ranked for a reason, and people that have spent a lot more times watching quarterbacks than I have. So I don't know that they're significantly different players in any way. I think I've always felt that it was sort of going to be first come, first serve, whoever wants it. And I still think that's the case. I just like Notre Dame's chances with Noah Grubbs better than Brady Hart right now. So I think Notre Dame would be perfectly content with either of them wanting to join the class. From anytime I ask, no one's willing to say, yeah, we like this guy better than that guy. They're just like, we'll take either. We'll be happy either way. So I don't know that you should be mad or upset if Noah Grubbs commits to Notre Dame over Brady Hart or vice versa.
Okay, so looking at the 2025 class, you reported elite linebacker prospect Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng has scheduled an official visit to Notre Dame in June. What are Notre Dame's chances, and how is the 2025 linebacker haul shaping up for the Irish?
Yeah, I mean, I still would consider Notre Dame a little bit of an outsider. I mean, he speaks very highly about Notre Dame. I still like Notre Dame's chances with Madden Ferramo a little bit more than I do Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng. They're basically recruiting 3 guys at the linebacker position right now. Those two and Gavin Nix, who's Owusu-Boateng's teammate at IMG Academy. But yeah, Notre Dame's obviously in a good spot if those are the last 3 guys you're recruiting. I'm not sure what Nix's ranking is, where he is in the Rivals 250. Let me click something real quick and I can get an answer to that. Okay, he's 136. So you're talking about 3 linebackers that are the top 136 overall in the country. The Owusu-Boateng's the number 1 overall, or number 1 outside linebacker, and number 24 overall. And Ferramo is in the top 100 as well. So you're talking about very talented recruits that Notre Dame's zeroing in on and trying to add to the class, so that already has a pair of commitments from Kia and Anthony Sacca, who's also a top 100 linebacker. So another good linebacker class, I think, for Notre Dame. One piece short of what Notre Dame wants, but I think Notre Dame should be able to close with one of those 3 guys. We'll see. I think none of them are guys that I have future casted right now, but I think we'll see how it plays out with all 3 of those guys scheduled to get on campus in June for official visits.
And we, at the top of the show, I made a veiled reference to Brian Kelly's silly 2017 signing day, February phone call where he had Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, which is Nathaniel's older brother, call, and Brian Kelly picks up the phone, puts it to his ear while it's still ringing, walks out into the hallway, lets it ring a million times before hey, Jeremiah, and pretends like Jeremiah had just made up his decision. I actually talked to Jeremiah about it. He said he almost hung up. The phone rang so many times. So Brian Kelly almost blew it, but it was one of the silly signing day things that we put up with. And the guy that was sitting next to me, who's no longer in our market, he was outraged by it. He's like, this is theater. This is ridiculous. And it's like, I had too little sleep to be as outraged as he was. I just thought it was amusing.
If you haven't covered recruiting for more than 2 weeks, if you're annoyed by the theater of it, because recruiting is 9/10 theater. Like that's the whole bit. I don't know. That's kind of what the whole thing's all about.
Well, this weekend, you are going down to Indianapolis to cover the Rivals camp down there. How good of a camp is this? What are you hoping to learn at the Rivals camp in Indy?
Well, hopefully a good camp. I do not know who will be there yet, so I can't sort of hype up who will be there. But it's always good to see guys perform in person and talk to them about the recruitments. The Rival staff always does a good job of reaching out to kids across the Midwest to get to one of the camps in this area. It was in Indianapolis, I think, 2 years ago. Last year was Cincinnati. So we always like Indianapolis a little bit better, a little bit of a shorter drive. So yeah, I'm excited to be there on Sunday and get to see guys in person, talk to some guys, see. Sometimes there's a lot of times there's younger guys that catch my eye, because especially we're talking about the 2025 cycle. I'm not really going into this saying, hey, Notre Dame should recruit this cornerback. That's a 2025 recruit. They already know who they're going after, but there could be a sophomore, junior that really jumps out. One guy that jumped out a couple of years was Ethan Utley, who's a defensive lineman, who's a 4-star recruit that is committed to Tennessee. And a couple of years later, Notre Dame offered him. I was like, hey, I said this guy was good. Would you guys wait so long for on an offer? So yeah, it's interesting to see different guys in that environment get competitive with one another, and hopefully we get some better weather. I feel like they've been a lot. The last 2 times they've been in April. Now that we're in May, fingers crossed, where it's not. We have less of a chance of it being cold on a Sunday here in Indiana.
I'll tell you what the forecast is in a second, but do we have any questions before we move on to the next segment?
Sure. Jason Smith asked, does Bo Collins have more than 1 year of eligibility left?
I believe he just has the 1 year, because I believe he's in the first class beyond the COVID exempt year. And so this would be his 4th year of playing. He did not redshirt at Clemson. Correct. We're going to have fewer and fewer of these COVID exemptions. We're almost to the end of them.
Yeah, he's played more than 4 games in all 3 of his seasons in college football. So yeah, this will be his 4th and final year, and he's now a Clemson graduate. He just graduated this past weekend. So congrats to Bo Collins on that.
81, high of 81, low of 60, and it looks like not a very good chance of rain on Sunday. So you're in luck.
All right. Beefeater asked, did you hear of any problems with the chemistry in the offensive line room last year?
I did not hear of that, nor did it seem apparent that there was that problem, and we didn't have a whole bunch of guys leaving either. So not sure where that would have come from if that was something that you had heard, Beefeater, somewhere else. Yeah,
I would echo you. I would say no. I don't know what else to say other than no, because I hadn't heard anything. But yeah, that's what I would say about that. Rajon has a couple more recruiting questions. Does this season sorry, the wording's not great here. How will this season have a big impact on the 2026 class, or will this season?
With Notre Dame, there's less of the how they're doing on the field kind of thing, but I think them making the playoff will be something that recruits know. Maybe not so much in the class. You're right, Rajon, not with the 2025 guys, but with the 2026 guys, them saying, you know what? This is another check mark that Notre Dame has in its column, because, they're trying to sell the 4 for $40. They're trying to sell the NFL future. And if they can pile on top of that being a playoff team, I do think that that's going to, for kids that are on the fence, give them something to think about. And Tyler is doing the lip reading thing again. So
sorry, I have a really dry throat. I'm drinking a lot, so I'm trying to mute every time I do that. So every once in a while I forget to unmute. Rajon pointed out it wasn't a question, and he's obviously right. It was his, but the how confused me. It's just a comment. How Indy does the season will have a big impact on the 2026 class, and I would agree
with us, Rajon.
Yeah, I would agree. I think particularly at those running back and receiver positions where I talk about more so receiver. I think Notre Dame needs to have some proven productivity at the receiver position. to improve its recruiting efforts there. Other question from Rajon. Well, not other, actual question from Rajon. Are we going to get Mark Zachary?
Well, and it says Tyler. So you're Tyler.
Yes, that is me. Thank you for clarifying that. Mark Zachary, I do think Notre Dame will get him. I've had a future cast in for him since February. He plans to announce his commitment later in May. He revealed today. So, yeah, I think that Notre Dame will get him. Notre Dame is the favorite. And we'll see if that changes between now and then, but I don't expect it to. Will be a good addition to the class. Potentially 3 Rivals 250 cornerbacks in one class for Notre Dame, which has never actually happened in the Rivals era, and the 250 started in 2006. So that's quite a few years of opportunities where Notre Dame can get 3 Rivals 250 cornerbacks and has not done so. So maybe it can pull it off this year.
And wasn't there somebody else that announced their announcement date today?
James Simon is the other one. He's a running back out of Louisiana, 4-star recruit who visited Notre Dame. I think it was April. It was sometime this spring, whether it was March, April. I think it was April. Notre Dame is one of his final 5 schools. Texas, LSU, Texas A&M, and Alabama, I believe, are the other 4. I put a future cast in for him to pick Texas. May 29th, I believe, is the date where he is announcing his commitment. So I don't
we
expect
almost cover that live.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll see if something changes there. But Texas was a school that I had heard some buzz for following his Notre Dame visit, and it seems to have continued in that direction. So I had always assumed or thought that he would maybe end up at LSU as a Louisiana kid out of Shreveport, but looks like the Longhorns might be going into Texas to pulling out a 4-star running back.
Okay. So we're measuring Notre Dame's talent quotient through the eyes of the NFL. So Pro Football Focus calculated the number of players on each of the NFL rosters. Notre Dame was 6th with 52, behind Alabama, 75. Georgia was 62. LSU was 62. Ohio State and Michigan each had 59. So Notre Dame at 6th, is that about where you'd expect Notre Dame to rank?
Yeah, I mean, I think that sounds about right. I don't know that I'd spend a lot of time counting up how many from other schools were in the NFL, but Notre Dame has a lot. They also have a lot, and I think you probably could say the same about these other schools. A lot of guys that are just sort of like hanging on. They're practice roster guys. They're guys that don't play a lot, but that matters. Those guys are making money to play football.
And some of them turn it into contracts. I mean, Brock Wright, my goodness, has a big contract.
Yeah.
And he was a hanger. He was a fringe guy for a while.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can make money even if you don't make a ton of money. You can get enough leagues in the year and get a pension. Like there's all kinds of success that can come from hanging around a handful of seasons in the NFL. I regularly look at the ESPN list of Notre Dame players to make sure I'm not missing anyone when I update some stuff on the board with signings from time to time. I've been trying to keep track of all the comings and goings of the Notre Dame players this offseason. I don't think that Notre Dame's will like make a big jump or drop any way significantly. I think those schools have probably been towards the top for a while, and I think it's probably pretty consistent. I think Notre Dame probably has fared better. I haven't studied this, but my assumption is during the Brian Kelly era, those numbers increased.
They did.
I know their draft pick numbers certainly did. And so I think the program is in a position where it'll continue to do that. I don't know that it'll change significantly. We'll see if that number can increase. I think this number is important. I think what benefits programs like Notre Dame more is if they become star players. Like I think Kyle Hamilton means a lot for Notre Dame in terms of recruiting. Kyron Williams can Joe Alt become a Zach Martin or a Quentin Nelson? Obviously, Notre Dame has been selling its offensive line recruiting for quite some time now. So I think those are some things to watch as it relates to Notre Dame in the NFL.
And then PFF added its way too early mock draft to the many others that have come out since the 2024 draft ended a few weeks ago. There are 3 Notre Dame players projected in the first round: Ben Morrison, Howard Cross III, and Mitchell Evans. Do you think this is accurate? Let's start there. Do you think that's accurate?
No.
Okay.
It's not Corey Robinson in the first round inaccurate, but I mean, Mitch Evans as a first rounder seems like a stretch. If Michael Mayer isn't a first rounder, is Mitch Evans really going to be a first rounder? I don't know. Maybe it happens. I like Mitch Evans as a player, but I have trouble believing that at this point. Howard Cross was projected. I like Howard too. He doesn't have the measurables that go there. And now certainly you could be like an Aaron Donald. I just don't know that Howard Cross is an Aaron Donald. Otherwise, he probably still wouldn't be in college football. He was the 4th defensive tackle drafted in their mock draft. Only 1 went in the first round this past year. So to have 4 seems like an overestimation.
I mean, some drafts are, more defensive oriented. This was a really imbalance towards offense this year.
Sure, but I mean, there was a defensive tackle who won the the Outland Trophy over Joe Alt, who didn't get drafted in the first round. So,
surprise!
So yeah, I don't know.
We were outraged enough that people wouldn't draft him.
Yeah. So Benjamin Morrison, certainly, I think he belongs in the first round. Maybe one of Cross or Evans does, but at least at this point, I think it seems a bit ambitious to project that.
Okay, well, let's go deeper in the draft as far as
Wait,
overall.
Do you agree or disagree? I can't be the only one with opinion on this one.
I think Howard Cross's size, even though his production is amazing, is going to work against him. I think it'll push him down. But I mean, a couple of years ago, you wouldn't even thought of Howard Cross III being draftable. He's played himself into a draftable prospect, but I do not think he would be a first rounder. Mitchell Evans at the end of the first round or early in the second round, I could see that happening based on how he comes back from the ACL, how he runs. I mean, he's got really good size. Michael Mayer didn't have the great athletic traits. Maybe Mitchell Evans tests a little bit better, but it is weird because Mayer was so productive. I mean, he overwhelmingly holds every Notre Dame record just about for single game, for single season, and for career, and he did it in 3 years. But I could see Mitchell Evans being at least a day 2 guy if he had a really good year.
Sure.
I do like him. How about some of the other guys that would be draftable? Who are some of the names that you like on the Notre Dame roster that could either play themselves into being a draft pick or are already there?
Obviously Xavier Watts would be towards the top of that list.
Yeah. He's in a lot of the top 50s.
Riley Mills. He's the opposite of Cross in I think a couple of ways. I think he does have the measurables, but then he also doesn't necessarily have the same production as Cross. Although Mills took a big step, I thought, last year, in playing more towards his potential. So maybe another big season, and you get him into an NFL combine, and people are like, "Wow, look at this guy." So we'll see what happens there. Certainly, Riley Leonard is someone who, if he has a big season, the quarterback class is deemed as weaker than normal. So where can he end up? I think Nate Tice, who does the draft coverage for Yahoo Sports, included him on his big board, I think in the 20s somewhere. And he admitted that was a bit of a stretch, but he liked Leonard's size, traits, and natural accuracy. So those are some of the guys. Who am I missing? Who are guys that you're watching for the draft? Like, I suppose maybe a running back too, but those guys haven't had a lot of. Usually, you got to have 2 years of productivity at the running back position.
I think Kaiser could play himself into a draftable position, given that Marist and J.D. Bertrand did too, and I think he's kind of a mixture of both of those guys. I think everybody else kind of has to play their way into it. I think Rod Hurd and Jordan Clark have those kind of aspirations. They're going to need to have a really good year, both of them, to get drafted. RJ Oben is a guy whose father was drafted, and I think he has those kind of aspirations. But again, he's going to have a Javonte Jean-Baptiste type of year. Jordan Botello too. I think Jadarian Price has draftable traits. And I think if he has a good year, he will come out after this year. You look at the wide receivers, again, they're going to have to be super productive, and they're not high wide receivers. They would be, lower draft choices. But, Bo Collins, I think he's at Notre Dame because he thinks that will help him get to the NFL. Chris Mitchell has speed. Jaden Thomas has been productive. He needs to be healthy. Deion Colsey has some size. Those are guys that possibly could get in the mix. I don't think that we would see a Notre Dame offensive lineman. I mean, Tosh Baker would have to have a really good year and actually be the starter as well. And I guess Rocco Spindler could maybe play himself into that, but he's not, or Pat Coogan, whoever starts there. I mean, those guys will be seniors with eligibility left. But I don't think anybody else is really in that. I think they have draft picks in their offensive line room. I just don't think they're far enough into their career to be looked upon as that yet.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to take any more questions here at the end? We're over an hour.
I don't see any more questions.
Okay. Do you want to wrap it up here?
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Make sure you're subscribed to our channel here on YouTube. Hit the bell for reminders to make sure you know when we have live content. Hit the like button to support the show. We'll also have some YouTube content hopefully coming out of the Rivals camp this coming weekend. So you get some recruiting stuff from us here on the YouTube channel. And then if you're not subscribed to us over at InsideNDSports.com, make sure you consider our 30-day free trial that we're making available to our YouTube audience when you sign up to get free access to our premium analysis and recruiting coverage and special access to us over on the Insider Lounge. Use the promo code NDYT to take advantage of that. There's a link to sign up in the video description. Our plan is to have a podcast in all the podcast feeds on Thursday this week. We'll be back here next week for Football Never Sleeps. Thank you to Legacy Heating and Air for sponsoring the show. And thank you to everyone for being here. If you watched on replay, we still love you too. And everyone have a great week.